So I really don't know why I do this to myself. So The Impaler is directed by Derek Hockenbrough. It's written by Derek Hockenbrough and Steve Snyder, and stars, I can't pronounce these names, Tia Kelligo, Marcian Dwyer, Christian Gehring, and Diana Angelson. So The Impaler is pretty much about seven friends who end up having to go to Romania, to the castle where Vlad III, who was the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula, where he used to live. And, bad stuff starts happening. You know this story. Now, I actually watched this movie way back in August, and it took me this long to kind of make up my mind of like, do I really want to, talk about this movie? But since school is out, I might as well like get this out of the way. And I've been trying to justify to myself like, why did I watch this movie in the first place? And I guess I watched it because I heard it had something to do with Dracula, but I'm sorry. And you already know from the way I'm talking about this movie is that this movie is terrible. Like, I'm not even gonna hide it. But the thing I will say is that it's not as terrible as some of the other disposable horror movies that we get a lot of here in the Philippines, so there's that. First of all, if you look at the trailer of this movie or even just the poster, you know that the production values just aren't there. All the sets, all the costumes, it feels like you're in a theme park where they're trying to pretend they're in Romania, and it just all feels completely fake and plastic. But the sad thing is that there are certain flashback sequences in this movie that go back to Vlad III's time, and there is no effort whatsoever to separate that era from this era. So when you go to a flashback sequence, you get really confused, like, because it looks exactly the same. And I've been trying to think to myself, like, if I was in their shoes, like, I wanted to tell this story, but I just did not have the budget for it, what could I do? Well, one thing you can do is just suggest it. Don't show, these things that you know you can't do. Obviously, visual effects in this movie aren't very good either. The little bit of CGI they have just does not work at all. One thing I will say, though, is that I do have to give kind of kudos to this movie for attempting to use a bit more practical effects. There's a bunch of makeup effects. When someone's throat gets slit, like liquid comes out. So it's not necessarily very good practical effects. It's just I have to commend them for trying. And then there are tons of just recycled shots in this movie. There's one scene where you see the same shot of someone looking at a castle twice, and it's really really funny. And you see the same shot of the moon like three or four times in this movie. Like, I don't know why they didn't just shoot the moon multiple times at different angles, but you see the exact same shot. Sometimes they flip it, but it's the same moon. But one of the biggest problems in this movie is the fact that they spend just way too much time establishing these characters that are unlikable, and we know that they're just all gonna die pretty much. All these guys are expendable, and it's kind of disappointing because this movie is less than 90 minutes long, and they spend like a full hour on it, I think, like just focusing on these kids. And this is a rare kind of movie that doesn't feel like it starts or ends. What I mean by this is that when you get introduced to the kids, the way you meet them is so awkward, so it just feels like you were dropped into a party like in the middle of all of them. But then when this movie ends, it literally just kind of stops without any point to what happened. You don't really get a clue of, the consequences of what happens at the end. So it's really, really strange. Now, I did mention a while ago, though, that this movie isn't as bad as the other disposable horror movies we've gotten before. And one of the reasons why is that it does attempt to put some depth into the movie. Like, I'm not talking though about the Dracula stuff because Dracula, he's not. There's nothing about Dracula in this movie. Okay, just don't be fooled like me. The deepest thing in this movie that they really try to go for, which doesn't really go anywhere. It's kind of a spoiler, but you're not gonna watch this movie anyway. It's that the characters are supposed to embody the seven deadly sins, but this is extremely inconsistent because only like really four or five of them embody the seven deadly sins, like five of them. And the thing is that these characters aren't really that bad to merit like this sort of punishment or to be labeled a deadly sin. One character is just on his phone the entire time throughout the movie, and I think he's like sloth or something. That doesn't make sense. Like, it's not that bad. And of course, the script is filled with just this hammy dialogue that tries to sound cool because it's trying to be all modern and hip and stuff, and people talking about how iPads can be used for cutting cocaine and stuff, and it's weird. Now, the biggest plus I had in this movie that was about to save it from me calling it a piece of garbage. Like, from the first 10 minutes of this movie, I really thought it was cool how all these friends had really good chemistry with each other. You could tell that these people were friends with each other in real life, I think. And but this chemistry really does end up falling apart as soon as they get to the castle because you don't get any sense of their friendship when they're in the castle. It just feels like they're all divided. Suddenly they all become typical horror movie cannon fodder. And at the beginning of the movie, they're kind of likable in the sense that you can sense that they're friends, but when they get to the castle, they all become super unlikable. They all hate each other, so it's all wasted. Also, oh my god, please no accents. Like when these people try to do accents, it's just it's terrible. Like I get that it's part of your story, but find another way to do it if you can't do it. And I really think this movie would have benefited from a lot more humor because the premise itself is ridiculous. There was some humor at the start, and they show the actors showed they're kind of capable of doing it, but this movie takes itself way too seriously. And in terms of the direction, there's zero creativity in any of the direction here. Good directing really can transcend whatever budget limitations you have, or cheap production design and stuff. But Derek Hockenborough or whatever, like it just feels like he was holding the camera. He wasn't really putting any real creative input into this. I mean, he can't even make this fun in a B movie way. It just feels like a really misguided student film. And watching this movie, I really started thinking about how Sam Raimi and his original The Evil Dead, that didn't really have a lot of budget. I mean, it had more budget than this one, but still, with those limitations, it really was able to transcend them through sheer hard work and creativity and just a sense of fun, and that's what is lacking in this movie. So yeah, I'm done talking about this. The Impaler is a terrible movie. Although I do have hope that this cast can get together one day and do like a comedy or something, because they have a bit of potential with the funny stuff. But this movie, throw it out. Anyway, so that's my review for The Impaler. You probably didn't watch it, but if you did, what did you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, whether you agreed with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.